Yeah, it's crazy what's going on with chess. I mean, it's really, really interesting. I'll start by saying I definitely feel for Hans Niemann, sorry, forgot how to say his name. I definitely feel for him. You know, there's been no evidence that he's cheating over the board, and I feel for him. He's got the world champion. He's got fucking like CNN and The Guardian publishing articles. There's this podcast that Fabiano does with this other guy who I was supposed to learn his name, Christian Chirilla. And then there's Nepo. Nepo fucking started. Oh, I'm not subscribed because I'm on my side channel account. And I'm on my side channel account because after reading Magnus's letter, I thought, wow, I didn't even actually get to watch their live game against each other that started this whole thing. So I went and I watched it last night, not all of it. I just screen grabbed all the parts where you can see them because we'll see that Magnus makes some very interesting claims. So I wanted to we're not going to just watch it, but I wanted to track through it and zoom in and just look at their body language and see what it looked like when the world champion lost this fatal game that would eventually lead him to pull out of a major tournament. Obviously, I did not support that decision. I thought it was wild and, emotional and not professional. And then Hans did his interview, not this one after this game, but the one that came the next day, which we went deeply into in the recent stream, in the most recent stream on this Twitch. But this was the one the day before that we didn't talk about. I don't know how much we're going to go into it. I'm just saying. The point is, this interview, everybody was like, Hans, what's going on? Hans, Magnus, are you both, like, what's wrong with both of you? And then Hans the next day did that really passionate interview we went over and won a lot of people back. Or won a lot of people, basically, who hadn't made up their mind. Who do they believe? What's going on here? Because Magnus hadn't made a statement. So now Magnus makes his statement. So a lot of people are talking about this, people who don't even follow chess. It's mainly the reveal of the Miami Beach game, which has put context to Magnus's claims, which made me reconsider. So, the Miami Beach game. So basically, yeah, they played a game against each other on the beach when they were in a tournament, the FTX Crypto or some shit. That's Hans here, that's Magnus. Is that showing up on stream? Yeah, okay. So in this image, we see them playing on the beach. And from what I heard, Anish Giri was within sight, the Super Grandmaster, Anish Giri, and he observed Magnus apparently blowing Hans off the board with black. So Magnus was crushing him. Look at his face. That's Magnus crushing the 19-year-old American. So apparently the theory is Magnus, in addition to already knowing that Hans had a reputation for being kicked off of chess.com for cheating once or twice, he was enjoying beating Hans, and then later beat Hans more. And that was, I believe, the famous tournament where Hans said the chess speaks for itself. Like, honestly, I mean, he's 19, so I'm not going to be hard on him, but that didn't win me over, is the least I could say. So anyways, Magnus gets this sort of like slightly maybe warped view. Who knows? Maybe Hans was hustling him. I mean, who knows? It doesn't, intentionally playing poorly on the beach to try to psych him out. Hans probably lost, Hans lost in the Crypto Cup. He lost, and Magnus in this Miami experience confirmed this idea of I'm way better than Hans, Questions that came to my mind in going through some of the stuff we're going to go through. First is, what if Hans has been cheating? What if, there are some separate questions here. What if Hans has been cheating over the board versus also, what if Hans has been cheating online? If Hans has been cheating online, do you think what Magnus is doing is justified? If Hans has been cheating over the board, do you think Magnus, what he's doing is justified? Do you think if Hans has cheated in 100 games online, is what Magnus is doing justified? Is what Magnus is doing justified? Sorry, I don't know how to talk. If Hans cheated in 100 games over the board, over the course of several years, is what Magnus is doing justified? And for this question, I will show a quick clip right after talking with Maurice Ashley.
And it's not even that I think Maurice seemed to think that Magnus didn't approach it in the best way, but I just don't know how. Let's say if I'm in Magnus's shoes and I'm really worried and really sure that someone's cheating, how I would approach it besides how he did it. I just don't know, because you either come out and say it or you do it internally and nothing. Because I know that
When he says internally, he means, I believe he means like submitting it to the International Chess Organization, FIDE.
I had the same suspicions in the past, and not with Hans, but in general in the past with cheating online and over the board. And I managed it entirely internally, and nothing ever amounted of it. It just got washed away, just wiped under the rug. So I suspect that that's what Magnus is worried about, that he just complains to FIDE, complains to these people, those people, and nothing happens. I can understand why, if you're really sure, and at this point we think that he is really sure.
He is sure, yes.
Then you think, well, there's nothing else I can do. And okay, he left the tournament, but even by that, without saying a single thing, just leaving the tournament, we already knew, right?
Yes.
That was enough for us to know.
And I will tell you what I think Magnus should have done. I do have an opinion, but I think that's the sort of question is like, what if you think Hans, like in a forget Hans. It's not about him. Well, it is, but it isn't. And we'll talk more about that. But like, if someone cheats, at what point is it worth doing something? And if it's worth doing something, what else is possible to do? And there's a lot more that can be done over the board to prevent cheating. That's something Fabiano gets into. He says the sensors to detect devices on people are not even up to date. He says someone who knows about this stuff told him that they're out of date. I've watched almost all the top chess tournaments, many of the live broadcasts over the last 4 years. And like, I don't think I literally can't think of a time they talked about cheating. It's not something that's talked about, not because it doesn't happen, but because like it's very taboo. And it's sort of like, what are we going to do by talking about it? Accusing someone of cheating is a huge deal in every sport. That leads to the next point. Like I think some people like Maurice are upset that cheating is even being talked about, because I think they think that it gives people ideas, which I don't think is true per se. And I'm not trying to call out Maurice. It's not like that was his main point or anything, but I just got this impression hearing him talk that like, he said like it's a sad time for chess, but like, I don't know why he said, and that's a quote, he said it's a sad time for chess. I don't know why exactly it's a sad time for chess, because cheating is being acknowledged now. It's not that cheating is more than it was. I mean, it probably is because of the pandemic and more online events where money is involved. But that's like, why is that a sad time? Why? I don't know. I don't get it, I guess, to why it's a sad time for chess. It's like every sport has, this type of thing. You have to root out people who are cheating. It's just something chess needs to develop a respectable, position towards. Okay, my next thought. Oh, so this is my opinion. Okay, I'll just tell you now. I think Magnus should have not pulled out from the Sinquefield Cup. I know, very controversial opinion. I think he should have not pulled out from the tournament. And I think doing everything he's doing now is understandable, but I think he should have done it in a different order. And all the work he's doing now, like getting permission to release evidence or whatever, like that should have been done before. He should have kept playing in the tournament. He definitely withdrew for emotional reasons, and he's now sort of trying to cover it up. But I think in trying to cover it up, it sort of reminds me of Better Call Saul, because it's like this interweaving of ethical and unethical behavior. Like he's doing something ethical to make up for something. I mean, withdrawing from the tournament was unethical. It was professionally unethical, and it was unethical. I mean, it harmed people's experience. It was negative. So Magnus is doing this weird blend of like self-serving sort of thing, self-serving behavior, and also like self-sacrificing, because he's doing something like pulling out of the tournament was self-serving. I mean, come on. He could have made every statement he's making now without pulling out from the tournament and fucking ruining it for all these other people who enjoy it. He ruined the tournament. And I don't use the word ruin a lot. He legitimately ruined it. Okay, still good. Some good games were played, but it's not games, it's a tournament, and he fucked it up. He didn't need to pull out to do anything he's doing, which everybody said the moment he pulled out. They were like, even if Hans is cheating, this is not the right decision, and that was the correct take. But what he's doing is also self-sacrificing, and it's important to notice that. Some people definitely miss that. He's taking a major reputational hit right now. There's absolutely no question about that. Maurice, another thing I disagreed with him about here, and you might disagree with me, but like I don't have the exact quotes on him, but you can watch. I mean, it's but he talks about how he says multiple times that Hans's reputation is permanently, he says like damaged, or like that his reputation is like fucked, basically. And I don't disagree. I don't like that assumption. It's sort of like the cancel culture stuff. Like, I don't like the assumption that his reputation is Hans's reputation. Like, when I say Magnus is taking a reputational hit, I'm not trying to make some permanency claim. And I feel like sometimes people, like, Maurice came off to me like he was trying to say that Hans had no chance of having a good reputation anymore. And I think that's short-sighted, genuinely. And I might be just overly optimistic, but I'm not trying to be optimistic. I'm just trying to say, like, you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. What do you think about him resigning? So that's a great next point. It was mostly self-serving. I don't think that was that bad, though. And he could have just resigned his game against Hans. It would have made a big statement, but he would have had to sit it out and go into the playing hall the next fucking, like, 6, 7 days. 8 days, 9 days, or some shit, and look at all those people in the eye after resigning to Hans and making a similar statement. He would have had to stick around. So withdrawing is self-serving, resigning is self-serving. He could do this whole thing without resigning. But I don't think the resigning was that bad. I think resigning was not a big deal. Again, it's making a statement, but so I'm trying to say he's not doing it for the publicity. I think he's doing it because it's his ego. He's like, I'm not playing against this kid. And I'll tell you, I don't think Hans is cheating right now. I don't know that we know, but I don't think there's evidence he was cheating. And I don't think Hans is probably cheating now. But Hans cheated pretty recently, and when he admitted to 3 years ago, like, that's not that long ago. I don't care that he's 19. Like, 19 or 20 or 30 or 40, like 3 years ago is really not a lot of time. So anyway, so in this, when Niemann was invited last minute to the 2022 Sinquefield Cup, because Niemann was invited last minute to fill in for someone, which happens all the time, but like, it's very significant. Niemann was invited last minute. Magnus strongly considered withdrawing prior to the event. Yeah, you might want to fucking say why, dude. But he doesn't have to, because we know it's because he already believed that Niemann has cheated more and more recently than he has publicly admitted. Which I said, okay, in that last stream on this channel, I was watching Niemann's 25 minute interview with Alejandro after round 4, which was the round Magnus didn't play because he pulled out. And he was cocky and intense, and it's the thing he linked to on his Twitter, and I just typed in Hans Twitter Niemann. It's his pinned tweet is watch the entire interview, not just the clips. This is my truth. He hasn't tweeted since September 7th. And as Fabi said in one of their recent videos, I think he lawyered up, which is fair. Does he have a case for defamation? How would the chess world react to Hans suing Magnus for defamation? Not well, in my opinion. But there's one other point I wanted to get to before we look at some of this other stuff. 2 other points. First is, why Hans, right? Because Hans is clearly suffering a lot from this. Why Hans? If Magnus is just trying to, if cheating is a big deal and an existential threat to the game, is this the best way to go about resolving that? Targeting a 19-year-old. We looked in the previous stream at Hans Niemann's FIDE card. Very steep rating hike. 2465 2020 October, 2645 2021 December. So that's like 14 months, and he went up 180 points. 13 points a month, 13 ELO a month for over a year. So I'm not saying at all that this is evidence of cheating, because this is not evidence of cheating. To be serious, like this is literally not. And I don't think people should assume that this 19-year-old is cheating. But the point I'm trying to make is like, you can criticize Magnus. I think it's totally fair, and I have. But I think you need to understand that like, I don't think it's just a vicious lashing out to a guy who beat him. Because in Magnus's mind, and look, he says this in his over-the-board progress has been unusual. That he's talking about this. He's talking about this. I can almost guarantee it. His classical rating going up 180 points in like 14 months. But this is Magnus. Okay, maybe they don't choose their own pictures, actually, now that I think about it. Okay, so this is really hard to look at because we have to go back to here. So getting up to a similar rating, 2645. Yeah, okay, so 2006 April. So I'm looking for 2466. Okay, so 2006 April. Okay, so 2004. It's about 2003 October. So it's about December 2003 to April 2006 to go the same. So it took Magnus 2.5 years to go between the same ratings that Hans went in 14 months. So I'm not saying that this is evidence of Hans cheating. I'm saying this explains why Magnus is singling out Hans. Because think about it this way. There are a lot of people who wouldn't mind cheating in chess. There are a lot of people who could justify that to themselves. It's wolves and sheep in this world, and if I don't cheat, someone else is going to cheat. And they're going to get the tournament trophy. And you know what? I really actually deserve that tournament trophy. And really, I should be higher rated than I am now. Anyways, I should actually be so much more highly rated. And like, this is just me, like setting things right and making sure that I'm actually as highly rated as I know that I should be. So really, I'm doing the right thing. And like, so what? They would do it too if they knew how to do it. They just don't have the technology that I have. They're too stupid. Otherwise, they would all be doing it too. Hans's rise and his success. Hans has made it from like just some like sort of entertaining streamer who was like on his way to being a grandmaster, an entertaining IM streamer, American, with a bunch of personality and spunk, to a legitimate guy playing in the Sinquefield Cup, beating Magnus Carlsen as black. And I'm not saying that's impossible. That's extremely possible. That happens all the time. His over-the-board progress has been unusual, and throughout our game in the Sinquefield Cup, I had the impression that he wasn't tense or even fully concentrating on the game in critical positions, while outplaying me as black in a way I think only a handful of players can do. This game contributed to changing my perspective. So his evidence is that Hans wasn't tense or even fully concentrating on the game in his impression. And if he didn't say I had the impression, I mean, he could be probably more easily sued. It has to be I believe, I have the impression, I believe. This is a very, important thing for legal reasons. But I will admit that when I read this, and I read him saying that he didn't feel that Hans was tense or concentrating, it made me want to, as I mentioned earlier, it made me want to look at the game that they played. Anyways, I don't want to speculate or watch it, but I watched it and I tried to see if anything seemed different. I mean, you can't read too much into body language and everything. There's so much that people do like this. What does this mean that he's doing this? I don't know. You can't read into body language. He's just a 19-year-old who's playing the world champion of the sport he's devoted his life to. You can't tell him how to act normal. Give me a break. You know what I mean? So anyways, I just wanted to look at it. I think Magnus tilted, but I think Magnus is mixing a tilt with a legitimate thing, which is saying that cheating needs to be taken more seriously, and he shouldn't be mixing those two. Hans looks at Magnus more than I've probably ever seen a player look at another player. See, he just did it again. He does it way more frequently than I've ever seen another. And he does it more than Nepo. I made a whole video on my main channel. He just did it again. I made a whole video on my main channel of Nepomniachtchi's weird facial expressions. And Hans doesn't do weird facial expressions, but he looks at Magnus more than even Nepomniachtchi did. Okay, so here's one aspect of this. I think it's fair to ask, are the anti-cheating guidelines of FIDE good? Or should they be reconsidered in some way? It seems like the punishment, the sanctions for cheating, for your first offense, it's up to 3 years and up to 2 years if you're under 18. You're banned from FIDE-rated events. And then second offense is up to 15 years. I mean, yeah, sure, okay. I feel like 3 years is really short. I mean, I'm just thinking about my profession, okay? So I'm a social worker. I'm trying to think of like, what's a comparable bad thing that a social worker could do compared to like cheating in chess? Because like, if you fucking like have a relationship with your client or something, I don't think you're ever going to be a social worker again in any state. I mean, yeah, breaking HIPAA, it's probably not your banned forever. Breaking HIPAA, I don't know off the top of my mind what it is, but it's probably there's probably a money fine. There's probably several years. You probably have to take some re-educational course or something, which is totally fair. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's like a fair punishment. It should be severe. And look, like y'all, I believe people can change. I believe people can change a lot. Like, I believe people can like completely like rehabilitate themselves, but they have to be motivated to. They have to be incentivized to. And I don't think a 3-year suspension incentivizes people to. I mean, 15 years second offense, okay, I guess that's fine. It's like second offense? Second cheating offense? But Hans did cheat twice at age 12 and 16. If FIDE do some partnership with chess.com, there should be some difference between the punishments, though. I agree. You need nuance in punishments. I do think online is less serious than in person to like a very slight degree, but like it's still very serious to cheat online. Like even if it's unrated, like what are you doing? I feel for Hans and all professional chess players and I guess everybody in general, but like life is hard and like I understand like the incentive to cheat. I don't think it like makes you a bad person to think about cheating. But like, and like some people just like don't always know right from wrong until they're like 20 or sometimes like 22 or sometimes it takes a while. We're never born knowing right from wrong. Some of us don't learn it soon enough and hopefully we learn it. But we need consequences to learn. And I think Hans should have some consequences. I think this is cruel and unusual punishment. This is forced. Magnus has forced himself to do this. He probably doesn't even want to at this point. But he forced himself to do it by withdrawing from the tournament because he thought Hans was cheating. I mean, yeah, I'm on the side of lesser punishment too. See, there's this problem. It's not just that I think the punishments should be stricter. It's actually way more so that like the enforcement needs to be better. Just any punishments. Like people aren't even getting away with it. So Kostya Kavitsky, this guy. He's really nice and very level-headed and very cool. Check out his Chessable courses. I was watching him reflect on things, and he said, like, what Magnus is doing is especially wrong because it would be better to have 10 guilty people go unchecked and uncaught rather than have one innocent person accused and sort of tarnished in this way. Do you agree that it would be better for 10 people to go scot-free with cheating than to have one person punished falsely for cheating? I don't know whether I agree or disagree. It's such an interesting question because like that is the question you sort of have to answer in terms of how you go about trying to resolve this issue. You're either going to be risk averse or too permissive. It's hard that you're not going to hit the medium perfectly, but what is it? What's the equation? What's the magic equation? Is it better for 3 people to go not found guilty than for one innocent person to be called guilty? Is it 4? Is it 6? This is dialectics. No, I don't know. For me, I can understand someone feeling tempted to pull up an engine in another tab, but to cheat over the board requires collaboration and major planning, so it's much worse for me. That is a very good point, Adam. That's a really good and worthwhile point. It's not just like the medium that it's online or in person. You're right. It's the amount of effort. I see what you're saying. That's a very good point. In my mind, Hans's silence for the last 2 weeks or so, ever since chess.com responded to him and said, actually, you misrepresented your cheating, which now Magnus has said as well. His silence is, I don't want to be harsh because he's allowed to take his personal time, but like his silence is not, to me, a good sign. You know, and honestly, I want to actually add this sort of point to it. Let's say Hans has not cheated any more than he's admitted. He could still explain what he admitted in a less sort of like defensive and self-righteous way. I was not impressed by that interview that everybody seemed to like. I thought it was self-righteous and Brett Kavanaugh-esque. And I think that even if he's just explaining the cheating he's already done, it's probably something he could do in more depth and with more of a sense of accountability and, self-awareness. I think he's capable of that. And I think he has every right to be a part of the chess community in some capacity. But it might be a process if there's some stuff to admit. If there's not, then great. Maybe Magnus just gets punished and we move on. That's great. But at this point, the truth has to come out. Everybody, we need more information to heal, honestly, as a community. It sounds corny, but like it's genuinely true. And I get why Maurice is pissed off and other people too, because it does fuck up the community. And we're not like it's like an imagined community. It's like online and shit, but like there's also a lot of in-person community. I mean, have you been to a chess tournament? I've been to many chess tournaments. I played in one a few years ago. I like played in a bunch as a kid. Like you legitimately have a sense of community. Sometimes you even stay in the hotel where you play chess. Other times you stay nearby, you drive there. You're there 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row. You're seeing the same people. You're eating lunch near each other. You're hanging out. You're showing each other your games. Chess is a real community thing, just like any other sport. And Magnus is probably fumbling here in a big way, but it's not that simple. It's not like he's the main villain. It's more complicated. That's my sense. Can you imagine if you just like if you were playing with your friend, like you're having a beer with your friend, you're just playing a game of chess, and then you find out that they were cheating? Can you just imagine that? I think that's an interesting illustration of just like strip away the tournaments, the money, the online, the whatever, the rating. Could you imagine that? Could you fucking imagine that? Like you catch your friends in a serious way, they're cheat, and maybe they try to like write it off and they're just like, oh, like whatever, man, like it's not a big deal. It's like, okay, man, yeah, I guess. It's like such a betrayal. So I don't think Hans owned up to that betrayal in his feverish, impassioned self-defense. I think he was too defensive and he didn't own up to how he betrayed the chess community exactly. He was like, I've lost friends over this. You don't think I've learned my lesson? And it's like, dude, you're focusing on the wrong, it's not like, yeah, if you can look at this in a less defensive way, you can realize like, you lost friends because you hurt people. And like, that's something to continue taking accountability for. Yeah, what if Hans didn't cheat at all? What is Hans supposed to do in that case? I don't know if he can prove that he didn't cheat, but I think they'll just take like all the good algorithms to his games and they'll try to figure it out. But like, it's really hard to detect because you could cheat on one move. You could cheat on one move. It could have no trace. You could cheat on 2 moves, no trace. But if he didn't cheat at all, I think he should still take more accountability for the cheating he did do in the past. And I think that's part of his next self-defense. And hopefully his last. Hopefully his last self-defense is, hey, I know I haven't spoken for a few weeks. This has been really difficult to deal with the world champion accusing me of this. And I just want to state my innocence. But I did cheat twice in the past or whatever. And maybe he should say how many games he cheated in. Because he didn't say that in his self-defense. Okay, so look at this. This is their game ending. Magnus resigned. Can you imagine what he's feeling right now? He just beat the world champion. That's crazy good. He just beat the world champion. He must be feeling so good. So it cuts back to Peter's fifth. Look at his face! So he must be aware that Magnus suspects Hans of cheating and probably wasn't even happy that Hans was added at a late date to the Sinquefield Cup. That's my speculation. Okay, my speculation is that from this face, Peter Svidler just watched Magnus lose to the guy he knows Magnus almost didn't play in the tournament because of. He suspects him of cheating. Then look at how Peter realizes he should put his face on. And I think the chess world really needs to heal. I think we do need to, as part of the healing, we need to make sure that cheating is addressed. I mean, you can't heal when there's harm still being done. Cheating's always going to be a thing. But like Fabiano said in this fucking podcast that he felt like the wands were not good enough to detect devices at the tournaments. And we can't live in that world. They need to, that's the bare minimum. Bare minimum. I just think I want to hear from Hans now. I spent 2 weeks wanting to hear from Magnus. It was what it was. A little underwhelming, right? I mean, I think we were all underwhelmed. I know I wasn't whelmed. I wasn't fully whelmed. But yeah, I mean, now I want to hear from Hans. And if he doesn't have anything to say, that's fine. He doesn't have to say anything, but it might be nice for him to maybe give his 2 cents and say, hey, hi, my name's Hans, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to start by saying my name's Hans, but you get the idea. Is there anything left for me to talk about? I think I might, should we stop? Let's stop.